PhD. I once had a colleague who just gotten his doctorate asked me if he should put it on his business card, and I said that if people cannot tell when you're talking that you have spent that long at university, it probably doesn't help to print on a piece of paper. I will, however, attempt to burnish my credentials in this regard by taking us back in time and talking about Albert Van Dicey and his book, The Law of the Constitution, which might be professorial, if not impressive. We'll find out in a moment. We are here today because of a common concern derived from various metaphysical sources that rights in Canada are eroding. And it is a paradox that this would seem to be happening at a time when we are rhetorically and institutionally obsessed with rights in a way that we did not once seem to be. To many people, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms ended the Grand Noirceur that engulfed not really Quebec but all of Canada. And it is funny that having brought such a thing into existence, we should then find ourselves reading, say, Ezra Levant's book, Shakedown, and wondering how on earth did we get from there to here. And Ezra, in his book, says that human rights were a good idea. Human rights commissions were a beautiful idea that failed. And in fact, the general thrust of my talk here today is to take issue with that proposition. I'm going to try and be ruthless with myself on time here. The problem with human rights commissions is that they are driven by a false concept of how you guarantee rights. And for that reason, it was impossible that they should succeed procedurally. It was not inevitable that they should fail as badly and at times as tragicomically as they have done. But I'm going to argue that they could not work at all. And in order to do so, I'm going to suggest that we have had a pretty good understanding in the West of what rights are meant to be since well before John Stuart Mill wrote On Liberty and put the whole thing in as unanswerable form as I think anybody has ever could. And it goes back through John Locke and John Milton and way back into the mists of time. I shall amuse myself to some extent talking about that, but not a huge amount. When we got the Charter of Rights in 1982, though, it did three things it shouldn't have done, and since we did have a plea for intellectual clarity from Richard, I will attempt to sort out the problems, because I think it is significant that they get tangled up. They probably were tangled up in the minds of the sorcerer's apprentices who gave us the Charter, and they certainly tend to get tangled up in debate. One of the things that the Charter of Rights and Freedoms tried to do was to establish popular sovereignty in Canada in place of parliamentary sovereignty. Because the people who drafted the 1982 Constitution were, on the whole, persuaded that you could not have rights if you did not have popular sovereignty. And this is an interesting question, but it's really a sideline. And by tangling them up, they made it hard for us to think clearly about what they had done and what went wrong with it. The argument with which I could fill a great deal of time if the organizers had invited me to do so, can you really keep your rights over a long period of time without entrenching them in a constitution that starts with the words, we the people? It's a fascinating question, but in many ways it's tangential to what has gone wrong in Canada. It is a fact that the Charter tried to establish popular sovereignty and botched it, and left us with a kind of unidentified constitutional object in which neither the people nor Parliament is sovereign. And whenever we try to amend the Constitution on some important point, we discover that we can't do it. There is no place where this can be done. The people cannot amend the Constitution, as in the United States. Parliament cannot change constitutional law, as in Britain. And the result is, in many ways, quite hopeless. But that really is a subject for another day. I merely put it out there to explain what I'm going to do my best to leave aside when I talk. The second thing that the Charter did was it gave us rights from above in a glowing and abstract kind of form. It said, that you have the right to freedom of speech. And that sounds good. That sounds better than all the fiddly stuff that we used to have. But there's actually a major procedural problem there, and that's what I'm mostly going to talk about today. With the, here we go. We may actually, turn that into a slideshow and we're off to the races. If you can find the appropriate control, there's a view. Yeah, can you get it to slide view? Even if you can't. Here are my 3 things that the Charter did. The third thing the Charter did, and this again is important to acknowledge in order for the most part to put it aside, the Charter promised us things there weren't. You know, it is a general rule that you cannot get out of a container something that is not in it. And the Charter encouraged us to seek from government things like personal fulfillment that are not contained within the state. In fact, it promised us a degree of human satisfaction that I suspect is not to be attained on this side of the grave, so we have to hope for the best on the other side. But whether or not this sort of bliss and fulfillment and acceptance and self-esteem can be had here in the here and now, we actually don't think we can get it from the government.